All right, hello, my name is Catherine from SEB Housing, and this is the information session for the affordable units at Waterstone in Dartmouth. And the purpose of this session is to give you some background information on the available apartments and also to cover the application, lottery, and eligibility process. So if you have any questions during the session, you were muted when you came in just to minimize outside noise, but you can either unmute yourself or type your question into the chat function in Zoom. And the meeting is being recorded for anyone who wants to view this after the fact. For interested applicants, it will be posted on our YouTube channel after tonight. So just for some background information on who we are, so SEB Housing, we are an off-site affordable housing consultant group. We're not the on-site management team. We haven't seen the units in person. We've been hired by the developer to market the affordable units and conduct this information session and eventually run the lottery. We'll also be the ones who are collecting and reviewing applications to determine your eligibility for the affordable housing program. So in the initial phases, we are your main point of contact rather than the management office over at Waterstone. But further along in the process, obviously, you'll be in touch with them for tours and for a lease screening at a later date as well. So the first step in the process is really to apply for the lottery if you're interested, and you'll be found eligible, hopefully, for the affordable housing program based off of what you self-report on that application. So during that point in the process, you can get in touch with SEB Housing if you have any questions on the application, or if you, just need some information about the property that you weren't able to find. The second step in the process, if your position is high enough on the waiting list that is generated after the lottery drawing, then you'll be put in touch with the leasing office at that point to complete your lease eligibility screening. That's separate from the screenings that SEB Housing will be doing for the affordable housing program. The leasing office's screening is going to be more like what you might be familiar with if you've rented before, credit checks, rental history check, reference checks, that sort of thing. And if you're found eligible by the leasing office to rent one of their apartments, you'll be then referred back to SEB Housing to provide us with all of the verifications that we need to confirm your affordable, eligibility for the affordable housing program. So when you submit your application, you're only self-reporting what your income, your assets, your household composition is. But then later on in the process, kind of on that third step, you'll be invited to submit your verifying information if you are one of the top households on the waiting list. So if you haven't already, you can go to our website, sebhousing.com. If you select I want to rent and select Waterstone, you'll be taken to a page specific to this property with a downloadable version of the application, the information packet, which contains a lot of the information that I'll be reviewing tonight. And then it also has a jot form link because there is an online application for this property. We encourage you to complete your lottery application online. It is the quickest way to ensure that your application gets received right away. And once you've submitted that online application, you'll get an instantaneous confirmation email just letting you know that your submission was received. And then about a week or two later, you'll get a more personalized email from SEB Housing with, if you're approved, with your lottery application number and details about which bedroom sizes you applied for and that sort of thing. If at any point during, if for any reason the online application is not an option for you, you can download that PDF of the lottery application that I mentioned, and then you can submit it as a paper application. Most people scan it as an email if they're doing a paper application, but there's also other options such as faxing or mailing it to us. But again, we encourage you to do it online if you can. And it is a fairly brief application, shouldn't take you all that long to complete because again, there's no required, it's not required that you submit verifying income at this early stage in the process. So applications are due by May 12th at 2 p.m. So The link to the online application will no longer function after 2 p.m. on May 12th. So that's why the deadline has an actual hour there. You don't need to be a resident of Dartmouth to apply for the lottery. However, there are going to be a few units that that local households have priority for on the waiting list. And I'll talk about that more in a few minutes as well. We have been in touch with the management team or the developer over at Waterstone this week. And you might have, if you read the information packet for this property, you may have seen that the first leases were expected to be available this summer. Construction has been delayed over there for a couple of months, so they're not quite sure on the timeline right now. It's likely going to shift a little bit. There may not be leases available in the beginning of the summer, maybe not even the end of the summer. So we're going to have a better understanding of what their new expected timeline is once they get rolling again with construction. So again, there'll be a little bit of a delay. The lottery is going to be held still at the end of May, but there'll be a delay between the lottery and then actually moving forward to the next step in the process to work with the leasing office about surrounding your lease eligibility. So just keep that in mind. But in terms of the units, so Waterstone is going to be a brand new rental apartment community located in Dartmouth. It's going to eventually have 288 units. 72 of them will be affordable units. This lottery is for the first 36. So there will be another lottery after this one at some point, probably not until next year, where the additional 2 and 3 bedroom units will be a part of that second lottery. This first phase is 36 units. All of the 36 units will be located in 2-story buildings, 16 units per building. So tenants are going to be responsible for paying their own gas heating and hot water, electric cooking, electricity, water, and sewer. And then there is unassigned off-street parking included in the rent, so you don't have to pay for parking. Again, this lottery is for 36 2-bedroom units. They're all 2 bedrooms. The rent is set at $1,583. And one of those 2-bedroom units has mobility and hearing accessible features. So if you need either of those, you will have priority on the waiting list for the accessible unit. And the affordable rents, so it's not set in accordance with an applicant's income. So this isn't like a voucher program where if your income fluctuates, your rent may change as well. These rents are set and won't change except for maybe one time, or any increases would be limited to 1 time per year. Usually that's at the end of your lease term. If you want to renew, if the rents have changed at all, they will let you know. And the rents are set using a formula that's based off of the Federal Housing and Urban Development Area median income for the New Bedford, Dartmouth area. Since we know that there's going to be more interested and eligible applicants than there are available units, because there's 36 units, this has been a popular lottery so far. The online applications have been coming in. That's why we're having a lottery for it, and the lottery is only available to households who have total household income at or below 80% of the area median income for the Dartmouth area. And I'll touch on those numbers in just a minute. So there's 4 eligibility criteria for the affordable housing program. So as you can see on your screen here, it goes by household size. So if you're a 1-person household, the maximum income limit for this lottery is $67,000. So if you make more than $67,000, you, as a 1-person household, you won't be eligible for the lottery. And then it goes up from there, as you can see, 2-person households, 3-person households, and so forth. That's 80% of the area median income for Dartmouth. Okay, so the eligibility requirements, the first is that your total household income is below the maximum income limit. The second eligibility criteria to keep in mind is that household priority is going to be given based on household composition. So what that means is if you're a one-person household or a couple that shares a bedroom, you're going to be considered a type 1 household. And you can apply for an affordable 2-bedroom apartment, but the larger type 2 households are going to be placed ahead of you on the waiting list because type 2 households are going to have priority for these 2-bedroom units. So basically, the affordable housing program wants to ensure that smaller households aren't renting larger units that they may not actually require based off of the number of people in their family. And then third, so households can't own a home prior to or when you're looking to sign a lease. So if you own a home now, it would need to be sold prior to signing a lease at Waterstone. And then fourth, this doesn't come up very often, but applicants can't have financial interest in the development or be what the program considers a related party. And what that means is you can't work for the developer or the management team or the leasing office because you wouldn't be eligible for this opportunity. So to circle back on the maximum income limits that you see here. So keep in mind that, again, your verification of income is not required to be submitted with your application, but you will be given a documentation requirements guide when you get your lottery application number, assuming you're found eligible for this lottery. That's kind of a cheat sheet that you're going to want to keep handy so you know what we will need from you, what SEB Housing will need from you if you move forward in the process and need to submit the verifying information to us. So just keep that in mind. The way we count income is a projection of your income over the next 12 months for all household members, and that includes, amounts that you made last year that you are not sure if they're going to be available to you next year, like bonuses, overtime, that sort of thing. The only exceptions to that are minors. So anyone in the household who is under the age of 18 who's earning a wage, we're not going to count their wage income. So if you have a 16-year-old who's working, for example, their wage income won't count towards your total household income when we're determining your eligibility. Same goes for dependent full-time students. So if you have a college student who's working, we would only be counting the first $480 of their annual wages. We are required, according to the program regulations, we're required to count your income as gross income, not your net income. So the amount you make before taxes if you're working, although obviously most of us are not taking home the full amount of our salary, it is the gross income that the affordable housing program requires us to take into consideration. How we calculate your income, though, isn't one size fits all, so everyone's income circumstances are unique. Some households are going to have, some applicants are going to have seasonal employment, per diem employment. Some people have very steady employment where it's just same amount into your paycheck every week or biweekly. But so for people who maybe don't get a check as often, we may need to look further back into your past income to project what you are going to be making or what you may be making in the next 12 months. And then if you're self-employed as well, you'll need to complete a profit and loss statement and provide supporting documentation for your business and business expenses. So when you're filling out your application, just make sure that you are writing down all sources of income. So not just wages, but if you have anybody in the household who is receiving Social Security benefits, unemployment, pension payments, that sort of thing, make sure that that's all written down. You'll also see on your screen here, you have it up, that there's an approximate minimum income listed as $57,000. And while there's no minimum income for the affordable housing program, so in the regulations for this program, there is no minimum income, but most management teams, including the one at Waterstone, wants to ensure that households can afford the rent, regardless of whether or not the household is renting a market rate or a affordable unit. So they've set the minimum household income at 3 times the monthly rent. So if you're looking to rent that 2-bedroom apartment, which is the only bedroom size that is being offered in this lottery, you would need to have an income above $57,000. The only exception to that is if your income is just slightly below that, for example, it is going to be leasing office's determination as to whether or not you fit their criteria. So if you make a little bit less than that, but you have a lot of liquid assets that you're able to access to potentially pay rent, they may approve your household if you're slightly below that. And then also, if you have a mobile housing voucher like Section 8 or MRVP, you can disregard the minimum income altogether because it won't apply to you. You have a voucher that the housing agency who administers your voucher will be paying a portion of your rent. So you don't have to worry about the minimum income threshold. There is no asset limit for rental opportunities. So you might be retired, you have a significant amount of assets, that's fine. You wouldn't be disqualified from this lottery because of that. But just keep in mind that even though there's no limit, we will need to collect information related to your assets, because if your assets are generating any income, even if it's just a little bit of income, we do need to add it to your total household income when we're determining your eligibility. So we may be asking for for bank statements, 401k, the net cash value amount of those accounts if you have them. All right, so I covered the eligibility criteria for the housing program, a little bit of the lottery. I'm going to cover next lottery eligibility and how the lottery is run. If you have any questions, again, just a reminder, let me know. And so the lottery application, like I said, it is available online, either as a paper application or that online link. And so if you're interested, we encourage you to apply as soon as possible, get the process started, and we'll review your application as it comes in and contact you if any information appears to be missing, or if you're found ineligible at any point in the process and you're not clear on maybe why that is, or you have questions about it, please feel free to reach out to us. Maybe there was a typo on your online application and your income was incorrect or something like that. So just let us know if you have questions. If you're found eligible for the lottery, you're going to be sent an email with your lottery application number. And it's going to be in the form of a series of numbers. It's not a ranking of any sort. It's just the number that will be drawn in the lottery, because we want it to be anonymous and we don't want applicants' full names to be used when we're pulling lottery application numbers. So if you were the very first person to submit a complete application for Waterstone, your number would be A.001, and it'll just go up from there. In that email, it will also confirm whether or not you have indicated that you are currently a resident of Dartmouth, or if you're someone who works full-time in Dartmouth or has a child attending Dartmouth Public Schools, because in that case, you might be eligible for the local preference drawing as well. So there are going to be some units that have local preference, which means that local preference households will have positions ahead of all non-local preference households of the same size on the waiting list. So if you're a type 2 household who has local preference, you'll have a more favorable position on certain waiting lists than a type 2 household who doesn't have local preference. So just make sure that you're filling that out correctly, because you do need to verify your local preference status after the lottery if you are one of the top households on the waiting list. The email will also confirm whether or not your application indicated that you needed a disabled accessible unit. So again, applicants who require that special feature unit will have priority for it over households who don't require the features of the unit. So the lottery drawing will take place on May 29th at 6 p.m. It's going to be very similar to this format, a Zoom call where a screen share is shown. You can see the drawing happen instantaneously. It will be we'll be using a site called random.org, which allows us to kind of just reorder and do the drawing digitally rather than pulling numbers out of a box. And so during that lottery, all application numbers will be drawn, regardless of how many there are. There's only 36 units, so you might think, wouldn't you just pull 36 numbers? But that's not how these types of lotteries work, because the lottery itself is just allowing us to populate the waiting list based off of the results of the lottery. So in general, it is more beneficial for you if you're called early in the lottery, your number's towards the top, but it's not going to be the deciding factor as to where your number is on the waiting list, because again, there's households who might have different priorities than you based on their household type and all of that. So to give kind of an example of that, if a type 1 household is drawn first in the lottery and they've applied obviously for one of these 2 bedrooms, they're still going to be behind all type 2 households on the waiting list. But during that lottery drawing, during that Zoom call, you're not going to know, and I'm not going to know what household type that application number is corresponding to. So after the drawing, I sort the results onto the waiting list and send out the results, the waiting list to everybody who was eligible for this lottery. So at that point, when you get that email after the lottery is run, that's when you have a better sense as to whether or not you'll be moving forward to the next step in the process. When you get that email, like I said, you're going to review it and see if you're towards the top of the waiting list. And if you are one of the top households, you'll be moving on to the next step in the process, which is to apply for a lease with the leasing office. Now, I mentioned that this is kind of where there will be a delay. You will know that you're one of the top households on the waiting list, but you likely will not be referred over to the leasing office right away because, like I said, there's been a delay in construction for these units. So you'll probably have to sit tight for a little while, potentially several months, until their office is ready to either begin screening or pre-leasing for these apartments. Once they are ready to go, you'll be given about 5 days to get in touch with them and do your lease screening. And again, that's the lease screening that SEB really doesn't have anything to do with. They might be checking credit, rental history. They'll be doing the same background check or the same leasing check that they would be doing for market rate households as well. If you're lease approved, then that's the point in the process where having a position near the top of the waiting list really is going to help you out, because if you're the top person on the waiting list, you'll have the first chance to reserve an affordable unit. So you get to choose whichever affordable apartment that you would like. And then the second person on the waiting list will have the second choice and so forth. Once you've reserved an affordable unit, just switching the slide there. Once you've reserved an affordable unit, the leasing office will let SEB Housing know and will contact you to coordinate submitting your verifying information into us. So your income, your asset, your tax documentation, all of that verifying information will then be required for us to complete your program eligibility review. So hopefully by that point, you've looked at the documentation requirements guide and you've been able to sort of gather some of that information, or you have easy access to your pay stubs and tax returns and that sort of thing. And you'll have about 10 days to get that information into us. But I will say that most people don't submit everything right up front. There's a lot of information that's required, or maybe you send some information in and we have a question on a bank statement and we need more info. So don't be surprised if you get an incomplete notice, or if you need to have a little bit of back and forth with SEB Housing. That's understandable, and we'll work with you and extend, obviously, your deadline as necessary. So once you're leased, you're done with any kind of screenings until your lease renewal date. If at your lease renewal date you want to continue living in the apartment, we hope you do, and you want to renew your lease, you would need to recertify your income with the leasing office. So we always just suggest that households who are renting a affordable unit, we always just mention that you should keep sort of either a file or just make sure that you have access to everything that you'll need to submit to the leasing office for your recertification. And then if your income has increased at the time of your annual recertification, that's fine. It doesn't mean that you can no longer rent the apartment, or it doesn't mean that you can't rent it at the affordable rate, because if your income has increased to 140% of the area median income, you would still be eligible for the affordable apartment. To give you an idea of that, so a household of two would qualify for an affordable apartment, will qualify for this lottery, I should say, if you had an income at or below $76,550. That same household of two next year, can make up to $107,100 to, at the time of the recertification, to still be eligible for the affordable rent. So just keep that in mind. There's some wiggle room there if you get a raise or if you have someone who just started working in your household. So that's about all I wanted to get through from the information packet and just from the information we have from the leasing office or the developer. Any questions that I didn't get to? And once again, just the online application, the deadline is May 12th at 2 p.m. And we encourage you to complete it online, but if not, then you can go to our website and get the paper application or see the PDF application and send it to us by email or some other different ways as well. So thanks for your attendance. If you're watching this after the fact, make sure that you email us with any questions that you maybe weren't able or didn't ask tonight. And we look forward to getting your application. Have a good night.